everyone, it's Miss Puck from Mirror Lake. Thanks for joining today. I have a challenge for you today. Are you ready for that? Let's see. All right. I want to see, do you notice a pattern or something that these words might have in common? Let's take a look. The word night, know, right, knowledge, and horses say neigh. Miss Puck, what are you talking about? I want you guys to see, do you see a pattern or notice anything about these words? Take a second to think. What could they all have in common? I'll give you a hint. The word silent. Does that help you with anything? So this is a tricky one, like I said. If you haven't thought of it yet, that's okay. I want you to notice that some of the letters don't make the sounds. So take a look at the word night. Is there a group of words group of letters or a letter that you don't hear in the word night? I'm going to sound out N. I hear the N. I hear the I. T. And then I just hear the T. Hey, that GH is silent. That's a silent consonant. I noticed I don't hear that when I say the word night. How about the word know? What don't you hear? I don't really hear the K, do you? I hear the no, but not the K. I don't say kno. And then same with the word right. Can you guess what you can't hear? That's right, the GH. I hear the I, t. And then the same with the word knowledge. Hey, I'm seeing a pattern now. I don't hear the sound KN. I only hear the N for knowledge. And then the last silly one, horses say neigh. And when I'm reading that, I just hear N-A. I don't really hear neg because you don't say the GH. So that was a pattern. I told you it was tricky. If you got it, awesome job. But let's take a look at the target today and see what we're looking at. So here's the target for today. I will look for silent consonants, which are non-vowels. So we're specifically going to look for the KN, like in the word knowledge, and GH, like in the word highest, where those are tricky because they're really silent and you can't hear them when you're reading. The story I have for you today is Roberto Clemente, Pride of the Pittsburgh Pirates by Jonah Winter. Any baseball fans out there? On an island called Puerto Rico, where baseball players are as plentiful as tropical flowers in the rainforest, there was a boy who had very little, but a fever to play and win at baseball. He had no money for a baseball bat, so he made one from a guava tree branch. His first glove he also made from the cloth of a coffee bean sack. His first baseball field was muddy and crowded with palm trees. For batting practice, he used empty soup cans and hit them further than anyone else. Soup cans turned into softballs. Softballs turned into baseballs. Little League turned into minor league, turned into winter league. Professional baseball in Puerto Rico. He played so well. He received an invitation to play in the major leagues in America. What an honor! But the young man was sent to a steel mill town called Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hey, I see a GH, that's silent. Where his new team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, was in last place. Now, this was something very strange, being on a losing team. For the young Puerto Rican, everything was strange. Instead of palm trees, he saw smokestacks. Instead of Spanish, he heard English. Instead of being somebody, he was nobody. His first time at bat, he heard the announcer stumble through his Spanish name. Robert, Clement? It echoed in the near empty stands. Roberto Clemente was his name, and this is pronounced Roberto Clemente. As if to introduce himself, Roberto smacked the very first pitch. But it went right up in the infield and into the second baseman's glove. Still, Roberto ran like lightning and beat the throw to first base. The Pittsburgh fans checked their scorecards. Who was this guy, Roberto Clemente? Do you see one of our silent words? I see one here. There's the GH in lightning. I don't hear the GH, so we're looking for those silent consonants. To his new fans in Pittsburgh, Roberto was like a jolt of electricity. He could score from first base on a single. He could hit line drives, bunts, towering home runs, sacrifice flies, whatever was needed. Once he even scored an inside the park grand slam. Playing right field, he had no equal. He was always leaping, diving, crashing, rolling. Once, trying to catch a pop fly running full speed, he slammed into the right field wall and fell to the ground. Yikes, I bet some of you guys have played sports and fallen. At last, slowly, he lifted his glove. The ball was inside. But it wasn't just how he played. He had style. He was cool. He had this move he did with his neck before each bat, creaking it one way, then the other. Let's try that. I'm doing it myself too. Soon the kids who wanted to be just like Roberto were doing it too, twisting their necks this way and that. Roberto did it to ease the pain he felt from playing his heart out in every game. If you don't try as hard as you can, he said, you are wasting your life. Roberto tried so hard he helped the last place Pirates make it all the way to the World Series where they beat the mighty New York Yankees. Hey, noticing GH. I see that silent consonant. I don't think I saw any KNs though yet. Let's keep our eyes peeled for that. After the series, down in the streets of Pittsburgh, Roberto walked alone among his fans who were so busy celebrating, they didn't even notice him. That didn't bother Roberto. He was so happy to feel lost in the crowd of a party he had helped create. But there was something that would have made Roberto's joy a little sweeter. As much as fans loved him, the newspaper writers did not. When Roberto was in such pain he couldn't play, they called him lazy. They mocked his Spanish accent, and when Roberto got angry, the mainly white newsmen called him a Latino hothead. Roberto swore he would be so good he would have to get the respect he deserved. He would become the greatest all-around baseball player there ever was. At home that Christmas, Roberto went back to the same muddy field he'd played on as a boy. In his pocket was a bag full of bottle caps that he emptied into the hands of some kids. They threw him the caps, and he hit each one again and again. When he returned to Pittsburgh come spring, baseballs looked huge, and he clobbered them as never before. That season, he hit .351, the highest batting average in the National League. And still, he did not get the credit he deserved for being so great. It's because I'm black, isn't it? He asked the sneering reporters. It's because I am Puerto Rican. It's because I am proud. It was starting to seem as if Roberto might never be respected in the big world outside of Pittsburgh and Puerto Rico. And then something happened. The year was 1971. The Pirates were in the World Series again, playing against the Baltimore Orioles, who were favored to win. All around America and Puerto Rico, people sat watching on TV as Roberto put on a one-man show, stealing bases, hitting home runs, playing right field with a fire most fans had never seen before. Finally, it could not be denied. Roberto was the greatest all-around baseball player of his time, maybe of all time. The very next year, he did something that few have ever done. During the last game of the season, Roberto walked to the plate, creaked his neck, do that with me again, left to right, dug in his stance, stuck his chin toward the pitcher, and walloped a line drive off the center field wall, his 3,000th hit. Holy moly. The crowd cheered and they wouldn't stop cheering. For many minutes, the players stopped playing and Roberto stood on second base amazed how far he had come. This says, Roberto is now one of 11 players in Major League history to get 3,000 or more hits. That's a lot of hits. And yet, when the season was over, the hero returned to the place where his story began, to the land of muddy fields and soup cans and bottle caps, to his homeland of Puerto Rico, where he was worshipped. But did he sit around and polish his trophies? No. That rainy New Year's Eve, Roberto sat in the San Juan airport and waited for mechanics to fix the tired old airplane that would take him to Central America. There had been a terrible earthquake, and he wanted to help the victims. The plane would carry food and supplies that Roberto had paid for. Right before midnight, he boarded. The rain was really coming down. One of the propellers buzzed loudly as the plane took off. The engines failed, and the plane fell into the ocean. I don't think I had a chance to say this is also a literary nonfiction book. So it's written like a story, but this is a true story about Roberto. Just like that, it was over. Roberto was gone. How could his story end this way, so suddenly and with such sadness? The story doesn't end here. When someone like Roberto dies, his spirit lives on in the hearts of all he touched. And Roberto's spirit is still growing. It grows in the bats and gloves and arms and legs of all the Latino baseball players who have flooded into the major leagues. His spirit grows in the charities he started for poor people in Puerto Rico. And his spirit is still growing in Pittsburgh, where people who saw him play tell their children and grandchildren of how he used to sparkle, running, diving, firing game-saving throws from deep right field all the way to home plate, smack, right into the catcher's glove. If you joined us earlier this week, we read about Rosa Parks. I find that Roberto and Rosa all had some things in common. One thing is that they were persevering through hard times. Now, each of them faced different hardships and circumstances and things, obstacles in their way, but they each never gave up and they were doing things for their community, which is very inspiring. Now, if you remember what we do at the end of a story to check, what do? We check for comprehension using SWIBs. But before we do that, I wanted to go back to the target and see if we were able to do some things. I know I get so into the story, sometimes I forget to look for those, the target, but I wrote down a few that I actually thought of as well. So I will look for silent consonants, which are non-vowels. We were focusing on KN, like in knowledge, knit, know. If there's other things you can think of, you could write those down as well. And then also the GH, like in the word highest or fighter or mighty. You don't hear the G, and that makes a silent consonant. So there's a lot of other silent consonants as well, but these were just our main focuses for today. And I know I said we weren't quite looking for that in our book. We could always go back into our story after finishing the whole one. I like to just suggest maybe once you're reading a couple pages to then go back and look for those GH or KN words as you're reading, because sometimes then it's hard to go all the way back and try to remember it. So I want to go back into my story, open that book again, and look for these silent consonants. There's a little tip for you. So now since we finished that, let's do our SWIBs. Do you remember what that stands for? Let's hear it. I hope you said somebody in, wanted, but so. Awesome job. Remember, somebody is the main character. In is the setting. Where does it take place? Wanted. What was that character's motivation? Like, what did they want in the story? But, remember the big but, what's the problem? Again, there could have been a lot of small problems throughout, but we want to find the biggest one. And then, so, the solution. How did that problem get solved? Remember to always make sure those two connect, okay? So I hope you're thinking right now, you know I have it written for you already, but who was the main character of this story? Do you have the person in your head? And here's a trickier, do you remember what city they were in? See if you remember that. So at least we have the somebody in, and then do you know what he wanted in this story? What did he want throughout the story? So I have this filled out, not in a complete sentence yet, but using the same SWIBs, somebody in, wanted, but so. Did you say Roberto? He was, of course, the main character. Then, sorry, finding the camera, Miss Pack, stay still. In, they were in Pittsburgh. Wanted, I put that he wanted to be treated like a regular baseball player. But what was wrong? What was the main problem? Newspaper writers weren't very kind to him. So what did he do to solve that? He didn't let that defeat him and continued playing hard. Again, this is not the only answer. This is not the only correct one. If you had a different one, that could be right as well. But we're just basically checking our comprehension, checking, do we understand what happened in the story? And this is a great way to say orally, like you can tell somebody, or write it down if you want some more practice. Do you remember what I like? Do I like it in a chart, or do I like complete sentences? I hope you guessed it. If you've been with us or have been in my class, Miss Pak likes complete sentences. So just for fun, go ahead and read that with me. Roberto in Pittsburgh wanted to be treated like a regular baseball player, but newspaper writers weren't kind to him, so he didn't let that defeat him and continued playing hard. I do have a period down there. You just can't see it. But thanks for doing that with me. Remember that you can do this for each chapter or of a book that you're reading if you're doing a chapter book, or you can do it through after you finish a whole story, which is great too. Again, you don't always have to write it all down, but you can. It's good to keep that in your mind so that you're checking yourself as a reader as well. Parents, you can always ask your student or scholar for SWIBs. That's what we call it. Again, that's somebody in, wanted, but so. And if you're having trouble thinking about it, that might be a good idea for you to go back to the text, which is not cheating. That's what good readers do, is go back in the text to try and find the correct spelling of the character's name or the city or wherever they're at.
Hey mathematicians, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again today. This is Mrs. Nelson. I am your guide this summer as we explore and review and practice important third grade math skills and concepts that we need to know. And this is our third day exploring division. So this week we have talked about what division is, what it looks like, and also we have practiced and learned two different strategies that we can use to solve a division equation. So our first day we were exploring division, we talked about how to use a picture, drawing equal groups or an array to solve a division equation. And yesterday we practiced talking about how to use repeated subtraction, taking away equal groups from the total to figure out the answer for a division equation. Today, we will be learning a new strategy, which is a strategy that we also talked about and practiced for multiplication last week. So this strategy is skip counting, and it's not brand new because we actually used skip counting as a strategy for multiplying as well. So that's what we're going to look at today. So before we start on our learning target for today, just a quick reminder about what division means, that it's just splitting a total into equal groups. We think about sharing fairly, and one example would be dealing cards for a card game. So last time we looked at how to use repeated subtraction as a division strategy. Where we were practicing starting with the total. So like in this example, we looked at 16 divided by 4. 16 is our total we're starting with. And we were taking away or subtracting equal groups from the total over and over again. So repeated until we got to 0. And then we just counted how many groups did we have to subtract. So in this equation, 16 divided by 4, we were subtracting groups of 4 from 16, and we were able to subtract 4 groups of 4 total. And I also have a couple other models down here just to show in an array how we can see that 4 rows of 4 would be 16. And on the number line, if we were counting backwards, jumping backwards by 4 from 16, then we would jump 4 times to get to 0. So those are just some examples that go with our strategy that we learned last time for repeated subtraction. About skip counting as a strategy to do division today. I thought we would start by just reviewing what skip counting means and what we're actually doing when we skip count by a certain number. And one great way to practice skip counting and think about it is by looking at a 100 chart. So this is a 100 chart, just shows our numbers starting with 1 all the way up to 100. And it actually is written kind of like an array. So you see that the numbers are in rows, and it looks like there are 10 numbers in each row going across. And as you look at the hundreds chart, you can see all of our tens are going down this column at the end here. So just some things to do with a hundreds chart. Notice patterns. And it can be a really helpful tool when we're practicing count bys. So for example, when we're skip counting or counting by twos or groups of 2, it's like we're saying every other number. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, and so on, right? Those are the numbers we say when we skip count by groups of 2. Similarly, there is a pattern when we skip count by 5s, which we talked about last time. I'll use a different color to show counting by 5s here. We'll do pink. So our 5s, right, we always start with the number we're skip counting by, 5. And then when we jump up 5 more, we get to 10. We add 5 more to 10, we get 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on up to 50. And that just is another way to see that pattern that repeats when we count by 5s. In the ones place, we either have a 5 or a 0, and it alternates. So I wanted to show this hundreds chart today just to remind you that when we're skip counting, it really means we're just counting by groups in our head and we're skipping some of the numbers in between. And this is why we can use this strategy for not just multiplication, but also for division. Right. So today, here's our learning target again. We are practicing skip counting as a strategy to solve division problems. And to show that we can do that, we are going to count by equal groups until we get to the total in our division equation. So remember that division problems, we're always starting with a big total and we're splitting it up into smaller equal groups. So we are going to use skip counting and count up until we get to the total. And we're going to keep track of how many groups we counted, either with our fingers or tally marks. And I'll show you how we can do that, or any other way that you want to use to keep track of your skip counting as you're counting by those equal groups. Down below here are some important vocabulary words that we are learning as we explore division. And I went through these last time, so I'm not going to go through each word again, but you can see the definitions and a little picture example next to each important word. Today, really important to just remember when we're solving a division equation, we're looking to find the quotient. And when we're talking about this total that we're dividing or splitting up, we call that the dividend. Our divisor is the number we're dividing by. So those three words at the bottom, I do want to remind you of because those were new last time. And we want to make sure we understand what we call each of those important numbers in our equation. Let's take a look at how to use skip counting to divide, and I will do a little bit of modeling and showing how I can think through a division equation and use skip counting to solve it. But before I show you what I would do, I want to ask you to think about when you look at the equation here on the screen, 25 divided by 5, what number do you think we could skip count by? So just by looking at the numbers in our equation, can you figure out what we can count by groups of? Hopefully you're thinking about that number 5 and that maybe we could count by groups of 5 to figure this out. And if that was your guess, you're absolutely right. For this equation, since that's the divisor, the number we're dividing by, that tells us what we should be counting by, what skip counting groups we're going to count by. So in this case, we're going to count by 5s. So I could do that by writing my 5s as I say them, and then go back and count how many numbers I said. You can also use your fingers, and if you're counting out loud, you can keep track as you're counting and saying those groups. So I'm going to demonstrate that way first. So if you watch me in the screen here, I'm going to count by 5s using my fingers, and I'm going to stop when I get to 25. So we always start with the number that we're skip counting by, 5. So I will say 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And that's where I stop because that is the total that we're dividing by. So I counted 5 groups of 5. And that's how I know my answer. That was how I kept track of how many groups of 5 I counted with my fingers. I could have done the same thing by drawing tally marks. So again, counting out loud, I could have just done 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and kept track of my 5s that way. And I would see that I did say 5 groups of 5. And then as I said before, it's also okay to just write those numbers as we say them. So 5, 10, and I like to put commas in between, 15, 20, and then stopping at 25. And I see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of 5. So there's our answer again, 25 divided by 5. Using skip counting by 5s, we figured out that we would have 5 5s. This is just an array that I drew to show how we can connect our skip counting by groups of 5 to drawing a picture to make sure that we counted the right number of groups, and it can be a way to check our answer. Also, though, if you are feeling like skip counting is still kind of challenging, and maybe it's hard to remember what number comes next as you're counting by equal groups, if you draw rows and make an array as you're counting, you can see how many you have altogether each time you add another group. And so it can be a visual tool that you can use to help you when you're counting so that you can remember how many groups have you counted so far, and also just help you keep track of when to stop counting by groups of whatever. So this is just an array showing rows of 5, and our count by is written next to each row just to show what we did with a picture. Chance to watch me think through that last example of using skip counting by 5s to figure out 25 divided by 5, it's your turn to try solving this equation using skip counting by some number to figure out what 14 divided by 2 is equal to. So up here on our success criteria, just take a look because I was reminding of the different ways that you could keep track of how many groups you're counting by. So you can use your fingers to keep track. You can grab a paper and something to write with, and you can use tally marks. Or you could draw equal groups or rows as you're counting. Or if you have another strategy or another way that helps you keep count of your groups, that's okay too. You do what works best for you. And I'll give you a moment to work this out, and then we'll come back and look at the answer together. Hopefully you had a chance to try skip counting to solve this equation, 14 divided by 2. And now let's reveal the answer. So on the whiteboard here, I have an example of how you could have solved this. So the question says, did you skip count by groups of 2, or did you count by 2s? If so, great job. Hopefully you remembered that you can use that divisor, that number that we're splitting our total into, to give you a clue to what you should be counting by. So in this example, we can count by groups of 2 until we get to 14, which was the total we're dividing. And then we can count how many groups of 2 that we had to say. And it looks like we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 2s that we skip counted. Just to make sure, I can check myself with an array and draw rows of 2 until I get to 14, 12, 14, and then I can check and make sure that that is 7 rows of 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that should be the answer to 14 divided by 2. So check your work, see how you did, and don't feel bad if you made a mistake. Remember, part of math and getting better at math is making mistakes so that we can learn from them. So take a look at the whiteboard to check your own work and think about how you can use skip counting as a strategy for division. Nice job. Before we wrap up for today and I show you some more division equations you can practice on your own using skip counting to solve, I wanted to just point out this model that I forgot to mention that you could also use when you're skip counting to solve division problems, and that's our number line. And so if I wanted to use a number line to skip count by twos to solve this equation here, I would start at 0 and then jumping by 2 each time or adding 2 each time until I get up to 14. So that's just another model, picture, tool that we can use to show those skip counting groups and think about how we can skip count to solve a division problem. There are some division equations that you can try solving on your own for more practice. And remember, the strategy we learned today was skip counting. So I'm hoping that you use that strategy and practice skip counting by groups to solve these. But you can also use the other strategies that we've practiced this week, drawing equal groups or an array. You can also use repeated subtraction if you want to practice that strategy some more. But please do give skip counting a try. And one thing I did on these example problems is starred next to the ones that have divisors that you might not have as much practice with counting by. As I've said before, I feel like most of us probably feel comfortable counting by twos and fives, but some of our other numbers we might not be as confident with counting by groups of. So going back to that hundreds chart that I showed earlier, this is a great tool for getting more comfortable with counting by some of those other numbers, like tens. So if you wanted to count by tens, you can see all of your tens here going down, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. If I wanted to practice counting by threes, starting with 3, I could count 1, 2, 3 more and see what number I end up at. 1, 2, 3 more, and practice getting familiar with some of those other numbers we would say if we were skip counting by groups of threes, tens, and so on. So please give these problems a try. Do some extra practice on your own. All right, that was all for today. Thank you so much again for joining me, my friends. I appreciate you taking the time to do this math practice and exploration with me. And tomorrow will be our last day exploring division, and we'll be taking some of those strategies that I taught you this week and applying them by using one or more of those strategies to solve some word problems about real life situations where we might use division, like sharing a plate of cookies with some friends. Can't wait to see you next time.
Hola niños y niñas, soy yo la maestra Lorena Vázquez con ustedes una vez más. Aquí me da mucho gusto que estén conmigo acompañándome para aprender matemáticas. Como pueden recordar, empezamos esta semana a aprender sobre la división, que es la operación inversa de la multiplicación. Entonces, hoy vamos a continuar con la siguiente estrategia de división. ¿Están listos? Tomen su lápiz, cuaderno, pizarra, marcador y vamos a comenzar. Bueno, si recuerdan, ayer estuvimos practicando cómo dividir compartiendo en grupos iguales y dijimos que compartir debería de ser justo. Entonces, la palabra clave de ayer era equitativamente. Y eso quiere decir que estamos compartiendo la misma cantidad a cada parte o a cada grupo. Y si recuerdan, ¿cuánto vamos a repartir? Eso está determinado por el dividendo. Entonces, nuevas palabras que estamos aprendiendo esta semana y el dividendo simplemente es el total. Así que vamos a comenzar porque como que recuerdo que les dejé encargado algo de práctica, porque como bien saben, la práctica hace el maestro. Entonces, aquí tenemos el ejemplo de ayer. En grupos iguales vamos a compartir, así que la estrategia es grupos iguales. 12 dividido por 4 igual a. Yo ya comencé esta práctica aquí haciendo los cuatro grupos iguales o el divisor dibujado aquí. Y en esta ocasión elegí carritos de carreras de juguetes. Vamos a ver, entonces el total, nuestro dividendo es 12 y tenemos que repartirlo equitativamente en partes iguales a cada grupo. Entonces empecé con estos 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 y seguimos dando de uno en uno, en uno, en uno hasta llegar hasta el total, hasta nuestro dividendo. Así que van 4, vamos a ver, 5, 6, 7, 8. No podemos terminar porque llevo 8 carritos y necesito llegar a 12, 9, 10, 11, 12. Entonces, nuestro dividendo es 12, ahí podemos detenernos. ¿Cuántos carritos hay en cada grupo? O sea, ¿cuánto es 12 dividido en 4? Si pueden ver aquí, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Repartimos el dividendo equitativamente, así que la respuesta de este problema es 3. 3. 12 dividido por 4 es 3. Muy bien, vamos a ver el siguiente ejemplo que les di. 24 dividido por 4. Y aquí les dije que no les iba a ayudar ni con los grupos, pero si se fijaron bien, el divisor es el mismo. Los grupos son iguales, 4. Así que voy a hacer este como si estuviéramos en una clase donde no hay mucho tiempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Se pueden fijar que no me estoy enfocando en que sea perfecto mi círculo ni nada de eso porque no hay tanto tiempo para eso. Y como ya tengo aquí unos borradores y siempre usamos eso en clase, vamos a usar los borradores. Pero ahora fíjense, tenemos 24, nuestro dividendo es 24. Antes el dividendo era 12, ahora tenemos el doble. Así que vamos a empezar. Ok, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. ¿Ya llegamos a 24? No. Y me estoy dando cuenta que me estoy tardando muchísimo tiempo. Entonces, 8, voy a usar puntos para contar. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. ¿He llegado a 24? Aún no. Y se dan cuenta que voy en la misma orden para no confundirme. 17, 18, 19, 20. ¿Terminé? No, me faltan 4 más. 21, 22, 23 y 24. Ahora sí, tengo 1, 2, 3, 4 grupos iguales y en cada grupo he puesto o borradores y me cansé o puntitos hasta llegar a 24 nuestro dividendo. Entonces vamos a ver cuál es nuestra respuesta. Muy bien, contemos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Y en este caso, la respuesta de 24 dividido en 4 son 6. Muy bien. Y recuerdan, ayer les hice una pregunta. Les dije, ¿qué notan en la respuesta entre los dos dividendos? Ajá. Aquí tenemos 6 y aquí tenemos 3. ¿Notan por qué o notan una relación? Si ustedes dijeron que el dividendo se duplicó o se hizo el doble y también el cociente, la respuesta también se hizo el doble de 3 es 6, tienen la razón. Qué curioso cómo están relacionadas las matemáticas, ¿verdad? Así que vamos a continuar con la lección del día de hoy. Niños y niñas, hoy nuestra meta es, estoy aprendiendo a dividir utilizando una matriz. Nuestra meta dice, puedo usar el divisor para repartir objetos en columnas y filas. Divisor. He estado mencionando esa palabra, pero hoy esa va a ser nuestra palabra del día. Cuando ustedes me escuchen decir la palabra divisor, ustedes pueden decir grupos o partes. Entonces vamos a practicar. Divisor, divisor, grupos o partes. Muy bien, grupos o partes. Así que saquen su lápiz y papel si no lo han hecho aún, pizarra con marcador y vamos a continuar. Pequeño repaso, las 4 maneras de representar la división, muy similar a la multiplicación, sustracción repetida, que ya la estudiamos, grupos iguales, y hoy nos enfocaremos en esta matriz. Y hay un pequeño cambio con la multiplicación. Vamos a ver. Entonces, a ver, en multiplicación, las columnas representaban era la respuesta, ¿verdad? Era la cantidad. Aquí las columnas son los grupos. Las columnas representan el divisor. Muy bien, los grupos o las partes. Y las filas nos dice qué cantidad repartimos en cada grupo. ¿Está muy bien? Vamos a practicar con este primer problema. Tenemos un dividendo de 14, nuestro total. Y lo estamos dividiendo entre el divisor de 7. ¿Escucharon eso? Divisor. Divisor. Grupos o partes. Muy bien. Entonces tenemos que hacer 7 grupos iguales y tenemos que averiguar cuál es el cociente, qué cantidad hay en cada grupo. Así que nuestra primera estrategia con una matriz es hacer los grupos. Practiquemos. Necesitamos 7. Aquí va el primero, 2, el segundo, 3, el tercero, 4, el cuarto, 5, el quinto, 6, el sexto y 7, el séptimo. 7 grupos, el séptimo grupo. Ahora, tenemos que empezar a contar de acuerdo al dividendo. Eso no cambia, ya sea que estemos haciendo grupos iguales o una matriz. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 y 14. Niños y niñas, ahí me voy a detener porque no puedo tener más pelotas de fútbol que lo que dice el total o el dividendo. ¿Está bien? Así que vamos a ver cuántas pelotas de fútbol cabe en cada grupo del divisor. Divisor, grupos o partes. Muy bien. Ahora a contar, ¿cuántas hay en cada grupo? 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Niños y niñas, parece que hicimos nuestro trabajo correctamente porque cada columna tiene 2 pelotas de fútbol. Entonces, nuestro cociente en este caso viene siendo 2. 7 grupos 14 pelotas de fútbol divididas en 7 grupos iguales o equitativos da igual a 2. El cociente, la respuesta es 2. Vamos a ver el siguiente ejemplo. 15 dividido en 5 o 15 dividido por 5. Ahora, en este caso, el divisor, grupos o partes, es 5. Y yo ya empecé a poner las 5 columnas aquí. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ahora tenemos que continuar hasta llegar a nuestro total, que ya sabemos que es 15. Este es nuestro total. So, no podemos pasarnos de 15, pero tenemos que llegar hasta esa cantidad. Así que vamos. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. ¿Me detengo ahí? ¿He terminado? No, no he terminado porque no he llegado hasta 15 y quiero que pongan mucha atención porque en este tipo de problemas el error más común que se hace es que no se están alineando rectamente las columnas ni las filas y todo se va desordenando. Entonces, fíjense que estoy tomando el cuidado de ordenar todo muy bien en las filas. Este está directamente debajo de este y este está encima de este y están en una fila. Así que como son 10 helados de chocolate aquí y yo necesito 15, voy a agregar más. 11, 12, 13. Niños y niñas, ¿saben lo que pasa? En veces nos distraemos y perdemos el conteo y no sabemos. Si eso te pasa a ti, por favor, comienza de nuevo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Todavía no llego a 15, 14 y 15. Entonces, ahora podemos identificar cuántos helados le toca a cada columna o a cada grupo de acuerdo al divisor. Divisor, grupos o partes. Exacto, los grupos o las partes. Así que vamos a contar con ello. Muy bien. Aquí está el primero. 1, recuerdan, necesitamos 5. 2, y es una manera excelente de verificar nuestro trabajo, que lo hayamos hecho muy bien. 3, exacto. 4, dibujar en la pantalla es difícil, niños. Y 5. Tenemos los 5 grupos, 5 columnas. Ahora nos toca contar cuánto hay en cada uno. ¿Listo? A ver. 1, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Excelente, niños y niñas. Parece que lo hicimos correctamente. Cada columna, cada grupo tiene una cantidad equitativa de helados de chocolate, la misma cantidad. Entonces, eso es lo primero que tenemos que ver porque para dividir, así como para multiplicar, las cantidades tienen que ser iguales en cada grupo. Si no, no lo estamos haciendo correctamente. Y en este caso, 15 dividido por 5 son 3. Ahora, yo les dije que íbamos a ver la diferencia entre la relación entre multiplicación y división. Vamos a tomar este ejemplo. 15 dividido por 5. En multiplicación, las columnas no eran los grupos, sino que eran la cantidad en el grupo. Y las filas no eran la cantidad, sino que eran los grupos. Como división es la operación inversa o opuesta de multiplicación, esos dos trabajos o partes están volteados. Pero más adelante vamos a aprender cómo podemos cambiar este dibujo y obtener la misma respuesta cuando estemos dividiendo. No se lo pierdan. Vamos a ver. Ok. Como es de costumbre, hoy estuvimos aprendiendo sobre cómo dividir utilizando una matriz. Y sabemos que lo más importante de una matriz son las filas y las columnas que van verticales. Las filas y las columnas. Entonces, también otra parte muy importante de una matriz cuando estamos dividiendo es el divisor. Divisor, grupos o partes. Sí, quiere decir que los grupos o las partes donde vamos a repartir los objetos está determinado por el divisor. ¡Ja! Muy bien. Vamos a repartir los objetos equitativamente o iguales partes a cada grupo para poder dividir correctamente. Así que para mañana les encargo que practiquen, porque como les dije anteriormente, la práctica hace el maestro. Quiero que hagan este ejemplo. 9 dividido en 3. El divisor es 3. Muy bien. Quiere decir que va a haber 3 grupos, 3 columnas. ¿Y cuántas pelotas de fútbol o puntitos o tachitas, como ustedes quieren representarlo, se necesita para encontrar la respuesta? 9 dividido por 3. Y si quieren un reto para hacer con sus seres queridos, pueden intentar este. 16, que es nuestro dividendo, el total, dividido por 4. Así que, ¿cuál será la respuesta? El día de mañana nos enteraremos. Bueno, niños y niñas, hemos llegado al final de nuestro día juntos. Hoy aprendemos a dividir utilizando una matriz y aprendimos que las filas y las columnas tienen un papel inverso al de la multiplicación. Y usamos el divisor, grupos o partes, para repartir los objetos en columnas y filas. El día de mañana vamos a terminar esta semana aprendiendo a dividir con una ecuación, igual como lo hicimos en multiplicación. Espero tengan una linda tarde. Gracias por acompañarme el día de hoy.